tool that you use to work with type in InDesign is actually the Type tool. And the Type tool can be found on your toolbar. It's this T letter right here. And when you come over to your document and you click down, you're going to get this little crosshatch, which shows you that that's where you're starting. And what you're doing is you're actually dragging a text frame into your document. So go ahead and click and drag down until you have a text frame this size that you want. So let's pretend we're making another headline, and let's let go. And now you have a text frame, and inside that frame you have this blinking cursor. And if you start typing, you'll see that your text is going to be contained within that text frame, and you can just start typing right there. So once again, let's go over and let's pick our selection tool right here. And when you have the selection tool selected, you'll see that that text frame, you now get it highlighted with this bounding box. And the bounding box is comprised of these little squares around the text frame. And that gives you the ability to resize the text frame. But if you don't want the text frame at all, you can just go and hit your delete button and it'll get rid of it. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create another text frame, and I'm going to go click and drag. I'm going to make it the size of this column. And now you see that you have a second text frame, and there's your I-beam ready to start typing. And now we need to put in some text, but maybe we don't want to type it directly into InDesign. Usually the way the workflow works for InDesign is that if you have a page or more and it's not just a headline, and you want to lay it out in your program, you usually do it in a word processor and then bring it into InDesign. And InDesign has the ability to read any text in RTF format, in TXT format, in the Word DOC document format. Any of those different type of text documents you can bring in to InDesign through the place command. Now that you're in here in this text frame and you've got your cursor blinking, come up to File, and then come down here to this third section where you have the word place. And the shortcut for this is Control D, and that's a good one to know because you're going to use place all the time. So go ahead and click on place. And you're going to go into your dialog box, and you're going to go through your computer and browse to the place where you have text that you want to place into your file. And I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to pick this Davidson College file. And I'm going to hit open, and you can see that it went ahead and it placed that article in InDesign. But one little thing you're going to notice is that down here at the bottom you've got this red plus sign, and what the red plus sign is it's telling you that when this got placed there was more text than would fit in just the text frame that you created. And so what you can actually do is you can come up here to this column here, and you can create a new text frame and place it in there, or you can just go over to this plus sign, click on that, and now you'll see that your icon has changed to a dark cursor, and you can read the title of that text right in that cursor. And what it means is that the extra text from this frame has been loaded into your cursor. And if you come up here to the top of this column and you click and you drag, you can create a new text frame to lay out the additional text in that column. And now the extra text runs in this column right next to it. And if you go in and you change, say, this line, you want your byline to be a little bit lower, you will see that as you format this column, it affects this column over here because those two text columns are linked. So that's a cool little thing that you can do in InDesign, is you have your text run from one column to the next and they're linked so that you don't have to mess around with the text every time you make a change. Next, let's talk about using text placeholders. What placeholder text is it's just, generic junk text that's placed in your document so you can see what the layout's going to look like before you created your text or you have your text ready to lay out in the document. And to use placeholder text, all you have to do is go up to Type on your menu and come down here to Fill with Placeholder Text. And it's kind of hard to find because there's a lot of stuff on the Type menu, but it's down near the bottom right above Show Hidden Characters. Go Fill with Placeholder Text. Click on that, and as you can see, InDesign automatically fills that text box full of just random junk text And when you zoom out, you can now see what your layout's going to look like with text in it without having to actually have your text prepared. Up till now, we've talked about just putting in text frames into InDesign, but we should mention right now that you don't have to have a text frame to put text into InDesign. You can actually put text into any frame in your InDesign window. So let's go out to 50%, and you'll see that I actually have this blue area. This blue area right here, and this is a frame. It's a rectangle. It was created with this rectangle tool right there. And you can actually go into this, and once you grab your type tool, you'll see that you have your I-beam and it's in a circle. Just click on that, and you now have a blinking cursor right in that blue square, and you can start typing right in there. So you don't have to have a text frame necessarily to create frames for text in InDesign. You can actually start typing into any frame that you create. Now let's pretend for a minute that instead of having placeholder text here, we actually have a second article that we placed into InDesign. And when you're looking at this text, there's something that sticks out right away. And that's that this text frame and the text frame next to it, the formatting of the text is actually quite different. The font is not the same, the spacing isn't the same, and you want some consistency between your articles. Well, in order to change that, we're going to change this text. And currently the font, it shows as Minion Pro. And if we go over and we click in here, you'll see that this one is an Arial. So what we're going to do is we're going to select all of this text, come up here to our control panel, and we're going to change the font to Arial Regular, which is right down here. And that gives you Arial text. But now you notice that this is actually bigger than this one. So click back over here, and that shows you that this one's in 10 point and this one's in 12. So we need to select the area first. And you can actually do Control A, and that will select all of the text in the text frame, because you can see when we change it to Arial, it no longer fits in the frame. You've got your plus sign there. So it's not showing all of the text that's available right now. So let's go ahead and go to 10 point, and that's going to change all of the text in this frame to a 10 point font. So now we have the same text, but our formatting is different. So let's go ahead and select it all again, and you'll see that this looks like it's probably double spaced. So we want to go ahead and we want to change it to a double space. We can do that by going up to the type menu, and then you could go to paragraph. And here you have several different options that you can use to format your paragraph. You can do your alignments. You also have the ability to do a left indent, a right indent. You can do a first line indentation, and I believe there's an indentation in the other one, slightly. So we can go ahead and indent the first line by 2 or 3 characters, and now it's starting to look more like that. You have the ability to do a space before, you can do a drop cap, you can do a space after, which is spaces after each line, or you can do a last line indent. And the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to do a space after. And a space after is not going to actually double space this whole thing, but what it's going to do is it's going to give you a space after your paragraphs. And you can see here that in between the paragraphs, it's got an extra space. So let's go ahead and make this bigger, and just use the up arrow until you're happy with it. And now you have kind of a double spaced paragraph in between your 2 paragraphs. Now you've gone ahead and you've fixed the space between the 2 paragraphs, but you also want to fix the spacing between the individual lines. In order to do that, instead of going into the paragraph panel, you're going to come up here to your control panel, and you're going to go to your leading. And right now it's at 12 points, so if you want to double space, just times that by 2, which makes it 24, and hit 24. And now you have a double spaced paragraph. And that actually seems a little bit big to me, so I'm going to go ahead and hit Control A, select all the text, and I'm going to drop it by about half because it might be at 1.5 space. So if we go to 18 point, should be at 1.5. And now you see you have text that looks pretty similar to the text over here. and you have relatively similar formatting. One other thing I'd like to do here is I'd like to add a copyright notice to the bottom of the page, and I can do that by creating a new text box and then typing in the word copyright and 2014. Now that looks great, but I'm actually missing the copyright symbol. So the question is, how do I insert a copyright symbol? Well, I can easily do that by going up and using my Insert Special Symbols in my Type menu. So come up to your Type menu and go to Insert Special Characters and go to Symbol. And right there you have copyright symbol, and just click on that, and now you have a copyright symbol. Couple other things that we can show you quickly before we leave this lesson is that you actually have the ability to change the format within a text frame. Now, what I mean by that is if you look at your document here, you will see that you have 3 columns set up in the document. Well, maybe I want this particular text box to have its own set of columns just because I think that would look good in the layout. Well, to do that, I went ahead and I selected the text. And then let's go to Object, Text Frame Options. Click on that. And now you have some options for your text frame so that you can change how this particular text frame looks in your document. And here we can go ahead and we can add 3 columns to that particular text frame. And then the gutter, which is the space in between the columns, we can make that slightly bigger. You can also specify the individual width of the columns if you wanted to. Sometimes that's what you need to do to make your layout work. You can change the inset spacing here, and you can change your vertical justification and ask it to ignore your text wrapping. If you want to see what this looks like while you're doing it, go ahead and click the preview button, and now you'll see that if you go ahead and hit OK, that's what your text is going to look like. So let's go ahead and hit OK. And now, when you zoom in, you'll see that you have columns within your column. So that's something interesting that you can do by going up to your object and your text frame options. Now, maybe I don't want to do that. Maybe I want to get rid of that, and instead I want to create a bulleted list. Well, if I go back up to my type window and I go down to bulleted numbers and lists, I can go ahead and apply my bullets, and that's going to take each of my paragraphs and turn them into a bulleted list. Another thing that we should mention before we go ahead and leave this lesson is that when you have text here laid out in InDesign, you might be tempted to go into the text and edit it directly in the layout like this, but that's actually not the best way to edit a block of text in InDesign. The best way to edit a block of text in InDesign is to go into the story editor. And you can go into the story editor by going up to your edit menu and going to edit in story editor, or you use the shortcut Control Y. And when you click on that, you're going to open a separate box, and this is your block of text, and you're seeing it here without any of the formatting or layout. So if you've done some interesting things to the layout, maybe a drop cap or something else interesting to that layout, it can be a little distracting to edit with that in InDesign. So by going into your story editor, you have access to just the raw text, and when you close that window, it's going to go ahead and automatically update the changes you just made in your text box, and they'll be reflected in InDesign.